Chapter 2. Listening. A Balanced Diet. Listen to a lecture in a nutrition class.
So, today we'll be reviewing the basics of a balanced diet. Now, what we're talking about here are the correct proportions of carbohydrates, proteins, fats, vitamins, minerals, and fiber to both prevent disease and ensure overall health. So how does the average person make healthy food choices? Well, there are food guides. For instance, there's the U.S. Food Pyramid, the British Eat Well plate, and the Canada Food Guide, and all of these provide well-researched guidelines for consumers. Typically, they recommend a number of daily servings from the four main food groups: fruits and vegetables, grains, milk and alternatives, and meat and alternatives. For example, adults need to eat between 7 and 10 servings of fruit or vegetables every day. And a serving is 1 piece of fruit or half a cup of vegetables, let's say, making sure to include dark green and orange vegetables like spinach, broccoli, and carrots. Next, men and women need to eat between 6 to 8 servings of grains, particularly whole grains, with 1 portion being a slice of bread, half a tortilla, or half a cup of rice. As for the milk group, adults need the equivalent of 2 glasses of low-fat milk, including either yogurt or cheese. And then for the meat group, they need 2 to 3 half-cup servings of lean meats or alternatives, like 3/4 of a cup of beans or tofu. All food guides suggest very little in the way of fats, such as butter and oil, and that means no more than 2 or 3 tablespoons. Now let's pause for a moment. I'd like you to review these recommendations with a classmate. Are you eating a balanced diet?
Listen again to part of the lecture.
So how does the average person make healthy food choices? Well, there are food guides. For instance, there's the U.S. Food Pyramid, the British Eat Well plate, and the Canada Food Guide, and all of these provide well-researched guidelines for consumers.
What is the professor's attitude toward food guides?
Chapter 2. Listening. Conversation. Listen to a student talking to a bookstore clerk.
Hi, I'm looking for nutrition in the health sciences. The textbook for Nutrition 101, but it's not on the shelf. Or I can't find it.
Just a second. Let me check the inventory. Okay. It looks like we are sold out.
Oh, great. Just my luck. Do you have a new shipment coming in?
Well, no. And I just don't know how this happened. Did they open a new section of the course?
I'm not sure.
Looks like we're going to have to put the book on order. But it's going to take at least 3 weeks before the new shipment arrives. Why don't you check back with us then to see if we have it?
Okay, but what am I going to do in the meantime? I have pre-lecture reading assignments, that kind of thing.
Well, I'm pretty sure there are a couple of copies on reserve in the main library. So you could do the reading there, and then you may even be able to take out a copy if you get there fast enough. And what about a used copy? There are quite a few used bookstores in the neighborhood.
Really?
Yeah. Here, let me give you this list of store locations and you can check them out. Maybe a couple of phone calls beforehand might save you some time.
Good idea.
Yeah. And let me check the inventory list here. Yeah, the book's been in print for 4 years now, so there are probably quite a few used copies in circulation.
Great. Thanks for the tips.
No problem. And I'll speak to the bookstore manager to see if we can't get a rush order on those nutrition texts. You're probably not going to be the only one who's going to have this problem.
Great. Thanks for all your help.
Listen again to part of the conversation.
Just a second. Let me check the inventory. Okay. Uh-huh. It looks like we are sold out.
Oh, great. Just my luck.
Why does the student say this?
Oh, great. Just my luck.
Chapter 2. Listening. Conversation. Listen to a student talking to the university nurse.
Hi, how can I help you today?
Well, I've come in because I've put on 15 pounds since I started school this year, and I'm wondering what the trouble is. I mean, the weight thing seems to be getting a little out of control.
And are you living on campus?
Yes, I'm in the dorms on the west side.
And is this your freshman year?
Uh-huh.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because it's actually quite a common phenomenon for students to put on weight when they first start university and are away from home for the first time.
It is?
Yes, there's even a name for it. It's called freshman 15.
So, you mean it's not just me?
No, not by a long shot. You've got a lot of company. You see, what happens is, because of the significant changes in your life, it adds a fair amount of stress which can trigger overeating. And since you're on your own, you can eat whatever you want, like fast food and ice cream. Sometimes you need a little extra incentive to help you study, like a bag of chips or a chocolate bar. It all adds up to extra weight, especially if you don't exercise.
Yeah, sounds familiar. I guess I haven't been eating very well, and I really do need to get some more exercise.
Now there's a good idea. What did you have in mind?
Well, I used to like swimming.
So you need to get yourself to the university pool. It's free for students, you know, and a great stress release.
Okay, what else can I do?
Well, what I'd like you to do is to keep a record of exactly what you're eating in some kind of notebook, and then bring that back in a week or so. And at that point, we can identify what foods might be causing you a problem.
Okay.
And that'll also give us a chance to see if you're getting all the nutrients you need as well, so that we can ensure you're eating a balanced diet.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So you want me to keep a record of everything I eat for a week. So how about, can we set up an appointment for next week at the same time then?
Yeah, for sure. I look forward to seeing you.
Listen again to part of the conversation.
And since you're on your own, you can eat whatever you want, like fast food and ice cream. Sometimes you need a little extra incentive to help you study, like a bag of chips or a chocolate bar. It all adds up to extra weight, especially if you don't exercise.
Yeah, sounds familiar. I guess I haven't been eating very well, and I really do need to get some more exercise.
Why does the student say this?
Yeah, sounds familiar.
Chapter 2. Listening. Processed foods. Listen to a professor in a business class.
Okay, so today we're looking at processed food and the big gains it's seen in recent years. Now, why is it that these foods that are known to have poor nutritional value do so well in terms of sales? We're talking global sales of $3.2 trillion, a whopping 75% of total world food sales. Well, a large part of the reason has to do with the flavor. And these flavors are, in fact, manufactured by specialized food chemists called flavorists. The truth is that flavorists who sit around all day mixing volatile chemicals are responsible for not only the flavor, but also the look of processed food items. Items like TV dinners, potato chips, breakfast cereals, cookies, ice cream, and soft drinks are all enhanced by chemical flavors. Even a very small amount of a chemical compound can change a tasteless and colorless food item into an attractive and tasty money-making product. For example, strawberry-flavored ice cream includes a mixture of some 350 chemicals to achieve the desired taste. And it uses the same pigment used in products such as lipstick to deliver the required color. So, the flavor industry is a big part of the processed food industry. But how did it originate? Well, the flavor industry started in the mid-19th century perfume houses in Europe. And then, after the Industrial Revolution, newly founded American food processing companies began to realize they had a problem. They realized that by freezing, canning, heating, and drying their foods, they were for the most part killing the flavor. So what did they do? They turned to the established European fragrance trade with its expertise in chemical aromas. Interestingly, chemists that make perfume have the same qualifications as those who design the taste in processed foods. Then, after the Second World War, the hub of fragrance industry shifted from Europe to the US. And in 1958, the world's largest flavor corporation opened an office in New Jersey. Others soon followed, and in the 1960s, these firms helped introduce the American public to an array of new taste sensations like Pop-Tarts, Lucky Charms cereal, Cool Whip topping, and Pringles potato chips. Even today's fast food industry relies on flavor houses for dreaming up the taste of many of their products. And with all these tasks to fulfill, the American flavor industry commands revenues in the billions. So at this point, these large corporations control the US market, and so smaller flavor firms are now making headway in Asia, where the processed food industry is experiencing rapid growth. For example, the demand for convenience food is way up in both India and China. As a result, the global fragrance and flavor sector now brings in more than $20 billion a year.
Listen again to part of the lecture.
Even a very small amount of a chemical compound can change a tasteless and colorless food item into an attractive and tasty money-making product. For example, strawberry-flavored ice cream includes a mixture of some 350 chemicals to achieve the desired taste. And it uses the same pigment used in products such as lipstick to deliver the required color.
Why does the professor say this?
And it uses the same pigment used in products such as lipstick to deliver the required color.
Chapter 2. Listening. Food riots. Listen to a professor in an economics class. She is discussing the food riots of 2008.
Okay, so the food riots of 2008. Angry crowds, hungry protesters marching in the streets, looting stores, setting fires, resulting in over 50 fatalities in countries like Cameroon, Haiti, and Egypt. So how did this happen? Well, food prices suddenly went sky high. In fact, the World Bank estimated that average food prices rose an astonishing 83% in the 3 years prior to the crisis. And then there were shortages of basic commodities like wheat, rice, soy, and corn, the staples of the Third World. And then an additional 100 million individuals were being pushed into poverty to join the shocking figure of over 850 million already suffering from hunger and malnutrition internationally. So, there were 3 main factors that led to this crisis. Now, you've all done the readings from your textbook. Can you give me one?
Global warming?
For sure. Global warming and climate change had a direct impact. In fact, there was a doubling of recorded natural disasters in the previous 2 decades, from 200 to 400. Years of drought in Australia, heat waves in California, unpredictable rainfall in India, and cold spells in China all played a part in both a reduction of crop outputs and rising prices. Another factor?
Changing food preferences in Asia?
That's correct. Due to economic growth in both India and China, there was, and still is, an emerging middle class, which could now afford a more diversified diet. And what they wanted was more meat. This change in food habits among the newly affluent put a strain on the agricultural resources needed to raise sufficient livestock, which, as you may know, require huge amounts of grain. For instance, in the U.S. alone, between 80 and 90% of corn and soy crops are allocated for animal feed. Furthermore, the production of animal protein is energy inefficient. Now, what I mean by this is that it takes 54 kilocalories of fossil fuel energy to produce 1 kilocalorie of beef protein. On the other hand, it only takes 3.3 kilocalories of fossil fuel energy to produce 1 kilocalorie of grain protein. So, do the math. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that livestock production is a serious energy drain and a fossil fuel drain that has disastrous consequences for our environment. So, with this per capita increase in meat consumption in Asia, what we're seeing is a depletion of both world grain reserves and environmental resources. The question here is, do the richer nations need to re-examine their food choices and think about the millions who are starving worldwide? I think we all know the answer to that. All right, can you give me another reason food prices might have gone up?
Using land for biofuel production?
Exactly. There was a marked change in the use of agricultural land, a change from food to fuel production. All of a sudden, a large proportion of land that had previously been used for the production of food was being used to produce sugar or corn-based biofuels. And as you may know, biofuels were at first thought of as a more environmentally friendly alternative to petroleum-based gasoline. Sadly, however, the same amount of corn required to fill up your tank with biofuel would feed the typical African for a full year. To make matters worse, experts are now saying that first-generation biofuels are bad for the environment due to deforestation and nitrous oxide emissions. And again, the developed world needs to pause and think about whether individual transport needs are more important than basic survival for those in the Third World.
Listen again to part of the lecture.
So, with this per capita increase in meat consumption in Asia, what we're seeing is a depletion of both world grain reserves and environmental resources. The question here is, do the richer nations need to re-examine their food choices and think about the millions who are starving worldwide? I think we all know the answer to that.
Why does the professor say this?
I think we all know the answer to that.
Chapter 2, Listening Test. Conversation. Listen to a student talking to his professor.
Oh, hi, Professor.
Mark, good to see you. You wanted to talk about your paper?
Yes, well, the assignment was to look at the marketing sector of a particular food industry and list the strategies they use to increase sales, right?
Yes, that's right.
So, I decided to look into supermarkets.
Good choice.
And I've researched a fair amount of information. I've looked at the kinds of techniques used to increase on-site purchases, that kind of thing. But what's bothering me is I'm really at a loss on how to organize my paper.
I see. Well, give me a few examples of some of the strategies you have, and maybe I can offer you some advice.
Okay, sure. I've got a list here. Let me see. Okay. So, number 1, marketers purposely place flowers and produce at the entrance to most supermarkets. They do this for a pleasant visual effect, sort of like a hook to reel customers in.
Yes.
And then there's an audio backdrop playing soothing music, to make you slow down so that you spend more time in the store and, likewise, more money out of your pocket. And it's not only music. The supermarket actually plays commercials for their own products. So while you may not be aware of this, it may influence you on an unconscious level. And then there's the smell of fresh-baked bread from the bakery. And this not only serves to increase your appetite, but makes you buy more food.
What you seem to be describing here, with these examples, is atmosphere. Maybe you could have a section on that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And I could also include the fact that some of the more progressive chains are also including lounges. These are places where customers can rest, have a snack, and then continue on to spend more money as they grocery shop.
That fits in with atmosphere. What other sorts of marketing techniques have you come across?
Well, there's the fact that the more expensive brand name products are placed at eye level to encourage shoppers who might be in a hurry to spend more. It seems that cheaper products are placed on the upper or lower shelves and are harder to reach.
Anything else?
Well, then there's the idea of integrated marketing where strawberries, are placed next to whipped cream. So this prompts people to buy 2 items instead of just 1.
Well, maybe you can put those 2 ideas under product placement. What else do you have?
Well, there are pricing strategies like using bright yellow tags advertising everyday low prices that make a person believe it's some kind of discount when it's not. And then there's the practice of placing limit per customer signs on regularly priced items. And this makes people think there's some kind of sale when there isn't.
I see. That could go under misleading pricing techniques.
Yeah. And then another interesting fact is that since most people go to the store to buy perishables like produce, milk, eggs, and meat, these are placed around the perimeter of the store so that everyone has to walk around the entire store to get what they need. So as they make their way around the entire store, they end up being tempted by a whole lot of items in the aisles that they might not really need.
Interesting. I have an idea. Why don't you organize your essay so that it reflects a walk around the grocery store? You could start off with the flowers and the produce and introduce how the perishables are placed around the perimeter, with temptation lurking in the aisles. And then you could get into product placement and pricing. How does that sound?
Yeah, that might work. Maybe if I could combine a walk around the store with a classification of techniques, I might be able to build a really solid and original organization.
Listen again to part of the conversation.
And then there's an audio backdrop playing soothing music, to make you slow down so that you spend more time in the store and, likewise, more money out of your pocket. And it's not only music. The supermarket actually plays commercials for their own products. So while you may not be aware of this, it may influence you on an unconscious level. And then there's the smell of fresh-baked bread from the bakery. And this not only serves to increase your appetite, but makes you buy more food.
What is the student's attitude towards the marketing techniques? Chapter 2. Listening. Bigorexia. Listen to a discussion in a pre-med class.
Okay, so last week we looked at some of the more common eating disorders. We talked about anorexia nervosa and bulimia nervosa, which for the most part tend to affect the female rather than the male population. Can anyone recap for me? In particular, I'd like to hear about anorexia.
Well, we discussed the 3 major eating disorders: anorexia, bulimia, and binge eating, which have doubled over the last 2 decades. It seems that they now affect around 10 million women and 1 million men in the US. And anorexia, it seems to arise from a distorted body image. What I mean is that anorexics believe they are overweight, even though they are, in actuality, very thin. Individuals starve themselves, sometimes even to the point of death.
Yes?
Well, and the disorder often involves extreme dieting and a fair amount of exercise. And it's often related to low self-esteem issues.
Okay, that's a fairly good summary. So, up until now, we've been discussing eating disorders as if they're mainly a women's issue. But there's growing evidence that men may be equally affected. The disorder I'm talking about is called muscle dysmorphia, more commonly known as bigorexia. Now, the reason it's called bigorexia is because it is like reverse anorexia. So instead of being concerned with getting thinner, the person tries to gain more muscle mass. This obsession with becoming bigger and more muscular involves long workout sessions at the gym, a high-protein, low-fat diet, and often anabolic steroids, which cause severe side effects. For example, there's a lowered sperm count, an increase in aggression, not to mention kidney and liver disease. The disorder also has a number of negative social effects. What happens is that the people affected become self-conscious about what they see as faults, and this takes away their ability to relax and enjoy life. As a result, it's hard for these people to make friends and establish any kind of personal relationships. And in terms of numbers, it's hard to say exactly at this time, with bigorexia being a fairly new addition to the list of known eating disorders. Estimates range from hundreds of thousands to millions, with the majority of those affected being men. Now, I mentioned that anorexia and muscle dysmorphia were related. Can anyone pinpoint that connection for me?
They both seem to relate to a distorted body image.
Exactly. They're both concerned with body image and a false view of that body image in a person's mind. Neither the anorexic nor the bigorexic is satisfied with the way their body looks. And for that reason, they strive to change it through various dieting methods, food supplements, or even drugs. So where does this disdain for the body come from? Can anyone offer me their thoughts?
Well, it seems to me that there has been a fair amount of research done on body image and the media. In fact, a wide variety of studies confirm that self-esteem, body satisfaction, and body esteem is directly related to viewing various types of media images, like men's or women's magazines, for instance. Both men and women feel lower self-esteem and body esteem after viewing images of muscular males or thin females. And this reduced self-confidence can lead to risky behaviors such as steroid use, too much exercise, and extreme dieting, which leave a person wide open to an eating disorder.
I'd like to comment on the fashion industry in particular.
Yes?
Well, they set the standard of beauty for women, right? And yet, they hire models that the World Health Organization would classify as dangerously underweight. The average runway model has a body mass of 16.3, when a healthy BMI should be between 18.5 and 24.9. And models today are a lot slimmer than they were in the past. Today, for example, the typical model is 23% thinner than the average woman. If you ask me, the fashion industry is sending the wrong message to women.
But it's not only the fashion industry and the media, even children's toys provide unrealistic ideals of the perfect body. And studies have shown that they too affect self-esteem in both males and females. It's interesting to note that Barbie dolls have become progressively thinner over the years, whereas G.I. Joe and other action figures have become more muscular with these really large chests and huge biceps. Pressure to conform to an ideal body image starts in childhood and then continues throughout adolescence and adulthood with the onslaught of media images in magazines, billboards, film, TV, and the internet. There's just no getting away from it.
Listen again to part of the lecture.
And anorexia, it seems to arise from a distorted body image. What I mean is that anorexics believe they are overweight, even though they are, in actuality, very thin. Individuals starve themselves, sometimes even to the point of death.
Yes?
Why does the professor say this?
Yes?